policies would have changed. I think you would have streamlined some of the policies in terms of export licenses, in terms of imports. I think we would have set up the Eastern Cape as a big production area. I think we probably would have signed export agreements with some of the countries like China who needs product. And we do have the ability. I do think that you will probably see more urban farming. I also think you'll see much more hydroponics in our environment, and you will see, unfortunately, fewer people on farms in terms of farming. But that your big part of, if you get your policies right and you get your support right, in 10 years we can actually be a big exporter of food.
So there's a good piece to it, but what I'm hearing is potentially for South Africa and in a context of our unemployment, potentially does that mean that we sit in and particularly at the farming level of the value chain, I'm not talking about downstream beneficiation. Does that mean that we look potentially at jobless growth in this sector?
I think you do in certain areas. I also think it's our responsibility not necessarily to get stuck on just that, because I also think that we can create, job growth in the sector. Urban farming, as an example, the one I mentioned in Tembisa, we set up the structure. It trains 30 farmers every year. Those farmers will then be in a position where they can either get access to the models that we run, and ultimately you get into that process where you start to duplicate farmers. So I don't necessarily think that we should look at a 20,000 hectare or 12,000 hectare or 8,000 hectare farm and say, because they're reducing productivity, I do feel there's a place for them to drive export. But I also do think there's a place for small farmers to get into the value chain. What we need to realize is we had 65,000 commercial farmers back in 1995. I think today, there are different numbers, but most people say we've got 32,000 farmers. But a lot of those 32,000 commercial farms their generations are now farming on a farm that was created many generations back by their grandfather, whatever. But it was at that point a small farmer. So we need to really embrace small scale farmers in South Africa, and I think that can drive productivity, and that can certainly drive job creation.